before we get into sort of the latest dynamic in the American presidential election, Kelly, I want to ask you for your general impressions. Because Trump's running mate is JD Vance, who is such a booster of a particular vision of the American family. Families have come up a lot in this election, right? We've talked about how they've slammed Kamala Harris for not having children, when in fact she does have children. They are her stepchildren. We've talked about how Vance, how Vance has said that parents should get extra votes, and why that's fundamentally different from saying there should be a child tax credit. But I just want to get your, because you cover this regularly and so well, I wanted to get your thoughts on really how family and motherhood in particular has surfaced this presidential election.
Well, thanks for that. And I agree, motherhood and family and women's reproductive rights have been really central in this election. And I think a few things are going on. One, there's a widespread pardon me, let me say that again. One, there's a very widespread anti-feminist backlash going on right now. We're seeing a real reaction. We're seeing a real, honestly, conservative slide, not just among men in general, but even among younger men. So that's something worrying. We're seeing the fall of Roe v. Wade, which enshrined women's abortion rights throughout the country. And we're also seeing the rise of this sort of younger, creepy, reactionary called the New Right tendency that J.D. Vance is a part of. And they're really invested in these gendered hierarchies. And the way they tend to enforce those is by talking about women's, inherent role in the home, their inherent role as mothers, and working to further a future in which women are not so much part of the political sphere. Very much advocating for women's not return, because historically women have not been sequestered to the domestic realm, but return to, say, this mythic past in which women were a little bit disappeared. And so we see this, it's kind of a 1-2 punch from the right now, especially from J.D. Vance's wing of the right, where we'll see them demonize effectively women who are not mothers, or women who they say are not being mothers correctly, or who are not being women correctly. And this sort of very superficial, patronizing valorization of a certain kind of mother. And usually that boils down along race and class lines as well. So this is really central. And this is coming up in a moment when reproductive rights are at stake for so much of the country.
Right. I was trying to think about what's new here, because the sort of boring, like, oh, childless cat ladies, like they're just unhappy, they can't find a man, blah, blah, blah. That's not new, right? Like there's always been that, in at least for as long as I can remember. That's been a part of the American political discourse. But I think what is new, I think you're right to point out that it's that plus this attack on this successful attack, I should say, on reproductive rights, right? Which because for so long we had Roe v. Wade, or we had, even as abortion rights elsewhere were being chipped away at, like right now we're seeing attacks on abortion. We're seeing in Alabama, women cannot use IVF, which many people, use for, like, that is also a reproductive rights issue. In some states, people are restricting different forms of birth control. So, and there are people who are really saying that their end goal is for, saying and sort of implying that their end goal is for women to not be able to have really any control over when they become a mother, how they become a mother, or what kind of mother they want to be. And so it's to me, what's new and scary about this moment is the marriage of the idea with the political reality. But I was interested in getting your thoughts.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, obviously there has been this misogynist current of conservative politics forever, right? But the erosion of reproductive rights so quickly, I might add, just, in the past 10 years, it's been startling. I don't think that's entirely set in for everyone, just the ramifications of that. I mean, abortion rights are not just a health issue, they're an economic issue. They entirely dictate how women can organize their lives, pursue their relationships, pursue careers, have autonomy and just interpersonal freedom. So this attack on Roe v. Wade, and Trump at this point realizes that this is a very unpopular attack. Now he reframes it as we've sent abortion rights back to the states. But this attack really makes it harder for women to plan their long-term futures. It chips away at women's options. And I think this is really a dream. It's a dream come true of the conservative movement, which has been, throwing everything at the wall to try and strip away abortion rights for years, honestly. And just the final realization of that program, I think it has just enormous consequence. And I think the right is only just now starting to think about, what does this actually mean? What can we pursue having achieved this? And some folks on the center, on the left, are still trying to catch up and say, what does this actually mean for women? Should clinics close down? Should men be able to sue women for pursuing abortion? Should a large part of the labor force drop out due to childcare concerns? It's all encompassing.
I have one more question before I turn it over to Tom and Rohan, which is that some of the politicians in our country who are the most vocal about this, like J.D. Vance, like Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, have wives who are themselves very professionally accomplished. And so there are some people who say, well, look, like, it's not like they believe that women should all be in the kitchen. It's not like they believe that, women should only be in the home. Look at their lives. Look at their families. I have my own rejoinder to that, but I would rather hear yours.
These politicians who have structured their families in that way, and they're not just operating on a level of, we're going to suppress women writ large. They understand it in a very stratified, class-driven way. A lot of wealthier families outsource a lot of their domestic labor. I mean, a lot of wealthier families use nannies or childcare, and I use childcare. My children go to daycares, and our daycare providers are wonderful, and they are an integral part of our community. They help me work. They help our entire community function. But when conservatives talk about, women being mothers, they're not talking about women stopping work, because women have always worked in addition to parenting, which is work in itself. They're talking about limiting the options for women's paid work. They're talking about, creating these systems of restrictions by which, yes, some women are going to be working, and they're going to be working in childcare because that is the only option that lets them schedule having their children around while they're getting paid for watching other children. Abortion, limiting abortion doesn't take away the necessity for women to make money. It just makes it harder, and it puts them, frankly, under the yoke of other bosses, other people controlling their work.